Thanks for joining today. My name is Amy Defoe. I'm one of the science teachers here at Graduation Alliance, and maybe I'm your science teacher, maybe I'm not your science teacher, maybe I will be your science teacher in future courses, but today we're going to talk about Earth spheres and also some vocabulary strategies, which could go along with science, but it could also go into all your other courses, again, still in daily life as well, so it should be pretty informative. I also built in a couple question answer spots in between those two pieces so that if you have questions or you want to discuss anything about the program or anything else you'd like to talk about, we can do so. But I hope you guys are having a great day. I'm coming to you guys from I'm not in Western Washington, Eastern Washington. I'm in Wenatchee, and I was going to say Wenatchee for Western, because it gets all confused, but no, I'm in Eastern Washington. So as you can see outside, we're getting a nice little dose of some winter snow where I'm at right now. Hopefully, maybe you're a little warmer than I am, and we could switch. Maybe you want the snow. Maybe you have snow. I don't know. Before we get started, though, a couple housekeeping items in case you don't know kind of how the live sessions work with how you can speak and talk and all that good stuff. I'll go through all that. So the first thing is to let you know that these are being recorded, and we record them. Maybe you've figured this out yet and you found the library. We have a collection of all of these live sessions that occur during the week. Usually there's at least one a day, and they're all set up in a little YouTube library. The teacher mentor, and you can have the link to that after the sessions. The links get set out. And then what I suggest, or what I do, is I bookmark that page so that I can easily go back to that and I can see all of the different live sessions and updates as new ones come in, which is great because we know that sometimes, you know, these timings don't work for everybody. We all have life and we have responsibilities and things occur, and we want you to be able to have access to them when it works for you. So that's a good reason why they are being recorded for you guys. Also, you know, what we're talking about today, maybe you're not there, maybe you're not in earth science yet, or maybe you just haven't got to this unit, so that you can come back to it, you know, as you're going through each of these units and lessons and activities. And, you know, you can think like, you know, I wish I had a little bit more information, or, you know, I wonder, am I answering this correctly? Do they have an example of what it is that they're looking for? You know, you can go to that library and you can filter it by course. So you can just look at just the science ones, and you can look at all the different topics and activities. And, you know, I'm sure you'll find one that suits the needs that you have. So that's pretty cool while they are being recorded. Okay, so what you can do here in Zoom is you, of course, know you can mute yourself and you can unmute yourself. Being that we're kind of in this online schooling program, which is great, right? We all get to work and get our school in at times that work for us, and, you know, get to our goals that we want. But it's also nice to have these live sessions that we can all come together and we can put faces together and we can have interactions with each other. So I do encourage you during these live sessions to chat, to talk, to give feedback, to ask questions, and you can choose how you want to do that. So you can unmute yourself if you want to talk out loud, ask questions, feedback, go for it, please do. You can keep yourself muted, and of course you can use that chat box. So there's a chat box that you can type in if you have questions or you want to give a response. You can send it just to me, or you can send it to everybody that is in the feed. So you can just click, you should see on the chat box, you'll see like your name, and then there should be a little kind of arrow next to it. Just click on that and it'll kind of tell you who it is that you are sending the message to. So lots of different ways that you can interact. I don't care which way you interact as long as you do. Sounds good, you guys? Okay, same thing with your video. You're welcome to show your video. You don't have to. Again, it's all about what works for you. Sounds good? Okay, then we'll go ahead and get started, you guys. Okay, so let's take a look at that agenda. So I told you kind of the breakdown, and these, of course, are rough estimates on time, depending if we have more questions or less questions, or how fast I get through the information. That just kind of gives you an idea. So I always like to break it up so that we have that 2 question periods, kind of one after we get done with the content for today, And then I also, before you leave for the week in science, I want to make sure that you are good to go. Make sure anything that you have questions about gets answered before we sign off. Okay. Okay, so today we're talking about Earth science, and we're looking at the spheres of Earth. The majority of it comes from Earth science, but you'll see if you're in biology, if you're in any of the other sciences, environmental science, marine science, you will see these spheres pop up everywhere. And of course, you know, we hear about them in our daily lives. If you watch the news or you look outside, you're dealing with Earth spheres all the time. So it comes particularly from Earth science, but again, like I said, you'll see it in both Earth science and a lot in biology as well. Okay, so when you think about our planet, characteristics of Earth, we know Earth is a planet. How do you describe it to somebody? What characteristics make our planet unique? Kind of a big question to get started, so think about that for a second. And of course, I included a little image in there to help get your mind turning. What makes our planet so unique compared to, say, other planets? And again, you can unmute yourself, you can type in. Wow, does anybody know the nickname for Earth? They call it the blue planet. And if you look at that picture, there's a reason why. The majority of our planet is covered in water. So that's pretty unique to our planet. So we're a huge water planet. We have life. That's a big one. I like to look at the image to kind of give me ideas. We have people, we have buildings, right? Weather patterns you can see happening. You can see we have a collection of both land. You can see North America, South America, 2 continents there. Okay, let's move on here. So here is a little list, some more to help you out. Characteristics of the Earth. The Earth is the 3rd planet from the sun. They say 3rd is best. We have life. We have a very unique atmosphere. And that fact that the atmosphere, which we'll talk a little bit more, it provides the perfect environment or perfect temperature for organisms to live. We're not too hot, we're not too cold. We have magnetic poles, north and south magnetic poles that deflect solar winds, flares, and storms and other maybe materials coming from space. And if you didn't already know, the Earth is not this perfect little sphere that sits upright. It actually sits on a little bit of a tilt. So we're tilted at 23 degrees on an axis. This allows for the right amount of sunlight and heat. And of course, that causes the seasons that we have here on Earth. I talked a little bit about that last week. Okay. So hopefully you got some of those. So when we think about the Earth has, I'm going to change this little pattern up here. I'm going to move you guys over here. That works better. So I can see my screen a little bit better. Okay, Earth sphere. So when we talk about Earth, we say that there are 4 major spheres on Earth. And we know that Earth, thinking about the shape of Earth, it's a sphere. It's like a big ball, right? Like a big beach ball. When we're talking about spheres, we're talking about systems on Earth, really big systems. So everything in Earth's systems can be placed into one of the 4 subsystems. And we kind of break it down and lump it into land, water, living things, and air. And of course, that's how we would describe them, but we have real names for them. So those 4 subsystems, which we call the spheres, are the lithosphere, which is our land, the hydrosphere, which is the water, biosphere, living things, and the atmosphere, so air. And so here in this image, you can see, okay, we've got Earth as a whole. If we break our planet down into 4 smaller groupings or systems on Earth, again, we've got the lithosphere. That's talking about all of that solid Earth that makes up our planet. It's what we live upon, right? We have the atmosphere that's all the gases, or what we would say the air. This is where weather occurs. We look up into the sky. The biosphere, that's all the life. And all that life, that also includes kind of the habitat or the ecosystems that those organisms live in. So that includes humans, includes plants. And of course, the hydrosphere, we talk a lot about the water cycle in our science. So that's where that water is, all of the water in the earth, including the oceans. It also includes things that aren't water, that are in a different state of matter in water, and ice. Another little image to kind of show that again to you. So again, thinking about Earth, you know, here's our whole picture of Earth, the big picture. We break it down into 4 smaller spheres that make up our planet. The Earth, the lithosphere, the solid Earth, hydrosphere, all the water found on Earth, biosphere, all the life, and atmosphere, all the gases. Does that make sense? If not, stop me. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about each one of these systems. The first one is the hydrosphere. So again, it's pretty crazy to think about. You know, we see that picture, and yes, we see these massive, giant oceans, sure. But when we put a number to it, it kind of makes you go, oh my gosh, that's crazy. So when we think about Earth, more than 70% of the Earth's surface is covered in water. That includes oceans, lakes, streams, rivers, ponds, and marshes, but like 97% of that is ocean. Those are some big oceans we have on our planet. Pretty cool. All of these bodies of water together form what is called the hydrosphere. And hydrosphere, part of the hydrosphere is the water cycle, which shows the transformation of water on Earth, because water can be found in 3 different states: a solid, a liquid, and a gas. And you're like, okay, well, what are those? How is it a gas? How is it a solid? Let's take a look at those in the water cycle so that you can see that. So all living things need water and air to live. And again, like we talked about, water is found in 3 different states. So we think about it: ice, snow outside, the liquid. So that's what we usually think about when we think of water, you know, the stuff that comes out of our faucet, the rivers and the oceans and the lakes that we find here on Earth. And then we also have a gas. And you think about this, you can see this maybe if you're cooking up some noodles, you know, you're boiling that water and you see that steam, okay? That's water vapor. And so that is water hitting the stage of going from a liquid to a gas. And where we see this on Earth, that water vapor usually occurs from evaporation. It also comes from transpiration. Where's my plants at in this little picture? Transpiration is releasing water vapor from the pores of plants. But as we think about the sun beating down on water, you've seen this before, or maybe you've seen it like you wash your car outside and you see it's all wet, and then the sun shines on it and it evaporates. Those water molecules become a gas in the form of water vapor. And so that vapor moves up into our atmosphere. As it moves up into the atmosphere, those water vapor molecules, they condense, they clump together. So that's a property of water, is it wants to stick together. And as those water molecules and that vapor, they stick together, it gets heavier and heavier, and it condenses, condensation. And eventually it comes back, gravity pulls it back down into Earth, and that's how we get precipitation again. Okay, so as we think about the water cycle, it's the continuous flow of water on our planet, transforming. It's never changing, it's just changing states or formation, but it's still the same physical properties of water: H2O, 2 hydrogens, and an oxygen. So as you can see, that's the flow of it. So that's our hydrosphere. Let's move on to another one, the lithosphere. The lithosphere is also known as the geosphere. You can think of geo meaning the earth. And so the lithosphere is made up of the Earth's crust and the upper brittle part of the mantle. So think of all of kind of the hard, rocky substrate of our planet. That's the lithosphere. It's what we live upon. This sphere covers the entire surface of the planet, including the ocean floors. That one kind of tricks students up sometimes when they'll see this in a question. So underneath the ocean, it's rock. There's an ocean floor there, and that is the lithosphere. So here you can see the ocean. You can see that lithosphere. Sometimes the lithosphere is much higher, and other things are built upon that lithosphere, like mountain ranges. Okay. On dry land, the lithosphere contains topsoil. that is composed of both organic and inorganic materials, which provides a growing medium for trees and plants that is necessary to sustain life on Earth. So we think about reasons. Well, reasons why this helps sustain life on Earth provides habitat, places for organisms to live, resources for us to consume. You think about food, medicines, nutrients, vitamins, all those good things. But this big one right here, trees and plants. Trees and plants are producers. And what that means, welcome here, we're just talking about the lithosphere, talking about earth spheres. And so what that means is with these trees and plants, thinking about their importance, being producers is they are helping to provide that oxygen that we all need, that humans need, most organisms need to breathe. So we need to have these trees and plants here as part of that lithosphere to help us get the gas that we need to continue to survive. And so what's pretty cool is that we go hand in hand, right? It's a little trade-off here. We give off carbon dioxide, which is what trees and plants need for photosynthesis. And they use that carbon dioxide up and they produce oxygen, which is what we need. Okay, so the lithosphere, talking about the geosphere, it is the rocky substrate of the Earth. It covers the whole sphere. And as we think about that, we can actually take a little deeper cut into, thinking about our planet. What is it like inside? We always talk about the outside of the Earth, but what's going on inside? And we talk more about this in earth science. We talk about plate tectonics and continental drift, convection currents. But what they're doing is they're talking about the layers of the Earth. So as you're thinking about it, if you could get into the middle of the Earth, the center of the Earth, so to speak, you would find these layers of the Earth. And each of these layers has special characteristics. Some of them are solids and liquids. So as we think about the inner core right here, the inner core, so the center of the Earth, it's actually, this is pretty crazy to think about, it's a solid, but it's the hottest layer in Earth. And does anybody know why it's a solid? Thinking, well, how could it be a solid if it's so hot? Well, we've got these forces that are pushing down on us. So you think about us right now, how come we're not floating around? Well, we've got gravity that's holding us to the ground, pushing us down. And we've got that occurring inside of our planet. There's so much immense pressure and heat pushing down on the center of the planet that it remains a solid. So those molecules that make up the material in that inner core, they can't move. They're so pressurized, so heat, so pushed together that it remains a solid. Okay. Let's move on to the atmosphere. So the third sphere that we're talking about here on Earth, the atmosphere. This is the air and the sky that surrounds the Earth. Think of it as a kind of like a pretend bubble that goes all the way around our planet. And in there, we've got these perfect combination of gases that keeps our planet, what we talked about, at the right temperature, but also the right, what's the word I'm looking for, groupings of the types of gases that we need. As we think about it, we need to have this nice mixture of air that all of our bodies need. If we get it out of balance, we're not going to be able to breathe. And of course, other things are going to happen. So it provides the oxygen that we need to breathe. That protects us from the most of the harmful UV rays emitted by the sun. And it shields us from space rocks, meteors. And we talked about those, solar flares and storms. So a big one here is that it blocks out those UV rays. So we talked about the atmosphere being this kind of protector of our planet, where it lets us have the perfect conditions. It's not too hot and it's not too cold. And how it does that is by allowing some of the UV rays, ultraviolet rays from the sun, so thinking about that heat energy coming onto our planet, that atmosphere, it deflects some of it, but it allows some to come in. So it creates this perfect balance of the right temperature here on Earth. So as we think about other planets, their atmospheres are different, and as well as thinking about their distances from the sun. But us being that in that third position, we've got the right combination of the atmosphere allowing the right amount of energy from that sun to come in and deflects the rest away. Okay. The atmosphere also traps important heat that makes our planet inhabitable for all types of warm-blooded animals and organisms, including, of course, human beings. Water exists in the atmosphere in the form of water vapor that eventually condenses into clouds. So that goes back into what we were talking about with the water cycle and how that gas, that water vapor evaporates up. Water molecules, we think about their properties of them. They want to stick together, cohesive. They group together. They condense. It gets heavier and heavier, and gravity is going to pull that back down to the earth through precipitation. Okay. So again, yes, there is water. As you think about it, we look up into the sky, and it's a clear day. You can see the water coming down in the form of snow in the background. But if it's a nice clear day like here, there's going to be water in the form of that water vapor there in that atmosphere. Okay. In our science, we do talk about, some of the human effects and changes going on with our atmosphere. And we talk about the greenhouse effect and global warming and climate change. So as we think about the greenhouse effect, let me go on to this next one. Yeah, there is a picture of it there. Good. Okay. So the greenhouse effect, just like a greenhouse we think about that you might have in a garden or you go and visit a greenhouse, you think of the characteristics of it. What's it like inside of a greenhouse? Is it the same as outside? What's special about a greenhouse? Yeah, it helps keep heat in, so it makes it warmer, okay? It's great for growing plants because you're keeping kind of control of that temperature as well as that humidity, keeping moisture for those plants. Well, the atmosphere acts like a greenhouse. Naturally, this occurs, and what we have is, okay, so we talked about those sun's rays coming in. Here's our atmosphere, again, that kind of pretend bubble protective layer on Earth. And we're getting some of the sun's energy coming in and some gets deflected away. And that greenhouse effect, again, it traps that heat inside here. But what we're talking about with kind of negative effects of the greenhouse or changes to the greenhouse, we know that we are producing more greenhouse gases. These are things like CO2, CFCs, more methane, nitrogen, and what's happening is those trap more of that heat in. And so we're creating kind of this imbalance in our atmosphere. And if we trap more of those gases, again, it's trapping more of that heat, making temperatures rise on Earth. So greenhouse effect, again, is it's a natural concept or effect that we have on Earth with our atmosphere, but we also have kind of human-induced or human-caused greenhouse that's causing more heat to be trapped in. We talk more about that in our science. Okay, let's talk about our last sphere, the biosphere. Probably everybody's favorite, right? Because everybody likes organisms, living things. The biosphere consists of all living things in their non-living environment, from microscopic bacteria to massive blue whales. So we're talking about, the thousands and millions of different species that live here on our planet. And what we call that is the biodiversity. So the diversity of all the life that we have here on Earth. It includes even the non-living things found here on Earth because they play such an important part in sustaining life. They are considered part of that biosphere. So as we think about oceans, waterways, rocks, soil, mountains, canyons, each of these things together with all the living organisms compose our home. So we include that in there because as we think about it, think about soil. Soil contains both living and non-living materials, but that soil is part of, one, it provides a habitat for these living organisms, a place for them to live, but it also is important to some of the systems that we have in Earth, like the nitrogen system and the carbon system. So they help kind of cycle materials on Earth. Another little picture kind of showing what we're talking about when we're thinking about the biosphere. So again, we can think about, just the organisms, the living things, the vegetation. But what we do is we also want to think about those non-living parts of of the biosphere. So as you can see, like, you know, animals that burrow into the ground and live there, right? The water that makes up the habitat for these marine organisms, that's also considered part of the biosphere. And if you caught that, you might notice, well, wait a minute, you're talking about things that could be into two different spheres. And yes, that is true. There's going to be some parts that overlap the two spheres. So as you think about, you know, the water that makes up this marine living little, what would we say? Is it a bay? Goes out into a bigger part of the ocean for sure. But so it's considered, yes, part of the hydrosphere because it is water. But again, it's also part of that biosphere because it's providing that ecosystem, that habitat for those organisms. You know, same thing with these organisms that are burrowing and living into the ground. We could say, yes, this is part of the lithosphere, part of that rocky substrate surface on Earth, but also part of the biosphere because, again, this is where these living organisms are habitating. Makes sense? Kind of cool to see it all in here together. Okay, so then another little image here to kind of put all four of those spheres together in a very simple kind of graphic here. So we think about the four spheres, you know, at the beginning we looked at, you know, looking at it here at this type of a picture showing the Earth as the center and then the four spheres that make up the Earth, to looking at, okay, here's an example of how those four interact together in one specific place. Okay, so again, here we can see the lithosphere, that hard substrate surface on Earth. And again, it even includes, like we talked about, under the ocean. So the bottom of the ocean floor, that is still considered the lithosphere. So the rocky part of Earth is the lithosphere. And upon the lithosphere, we know that we have the biosphere. We have living organisms like this wonderful tree that produces oxygen for us and takes away carbon dioxide. And of course, what that biosphere needs, as we can see, there's all these interactions between each one of these spheres. We think about a plant needs water. Every organism needs water. And so as you can see, there's a nice little specifically placed little bit of water there to show that that tree needs that water to photosynthesize and also to complete all the kind of processes that keep that organism living. Same thing with us. We need to consume water to keep all of our cell functions, keep what we call homeostasis, this nice equilibrium of everything working correctly. Okay. Oh, so we got the hydrosphere, we talked about the water, and then as we think about our last one here, that atmosphere, and we talked about that as we think about that tree, using the exchange of gases going on to photosynthesize, it needs carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide can be found in the atmosphere, draws in that carbon dioxide, uses some water, uses some sunlight, and it produces a sugar, and it also produces oxygen, which goes back up into the atmosphere. I think it's pretty crazy, pretty cool to think about all these connections that are happening on our planet, and we don't even think about it. It's just naturally occurring. Pretty cool. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about Earth spheres? Okay, a couple of little questions that go from this unit in Unit 5, just to kind of assume that these are some of the questions that I'll see as I kind of grade through, or students have questions about that they sometimes get a little bit mixed up on. Water exists in the atmosphere in the form of blank. That eventually condenses into clouds. So as we talked about water, water is found in 3 different states of matter: solid, liquid, and gas. Okay, but you're going to notice here, you look and you're like, well, gas isn't one of my options. So what did we talk about? Instead of gas, we use a different type of word to describe how the state of gas, the state of water as a gas. There we go. Anybody remember what that is? B, yay, you got it. Yes, it is. It's water vapor. Thanks. Yep. So again, instead of saying gas on Earth, we use the word water vapor. Okay, awesome. Good job. Okay. Again, we talked about that Earth being nicknamed the blue planet. Over what percent of the Earth is water? And that includes both freshwater and saltwater. So think back to that image. Quite a lot, huh? It's pretty crazy to think about. It is. It's 70%. Pretty crazy to think about. You know, you think about all the land on our planet, and you think about all the organisms, and then you're like, what? 70% of the Earth is water. It's true. This sphere covers the entire surface of the planet, including the ocean floors. Again, I talked a little bit about this one kind of being, oh, I don't want to call it a trick question. But again, when you see that ocean floors, you immediately think hydrosphere. But again, it covers the entire surface of the planet, including the ocean floor. So we're talking about what's underneath that water. You're correct. Thank you. It is A. It's the lithosphere. Mm-hmm. Water on Earth is found in 3 states of matter: water, ice, and snow. Is that true or false? That is false. What is it? Liquid, solid, and gas. Mm-hmm. Good. Okay. Sometimes in some of the activities, you'll see some of these different types of little kind of check-in questions that kind of ask you to do different things. So this was one of the drag the items from the bottom to the slots on the right. So it's asking you to take a description and match it to the word. And again, what you would have to do for this one, just kind of showing the different types of check-ins or items that we use kind of in the curriculum, is you would take your cursor and you would click over it and you would drag it up to the spot. This is a screenshot of it, so it's not actually going to move. The whole thing moves if I do. But again, drag the items from the bottom to the slots to the right, matching the description to each one of the spheres. So all the land we see and interact with, we will want to take that one and drag it up to the biosphere, all the land. So in the end, once you finish that little check-in, this is what it looks like. So kind of just describing again, a quick little, okay, do you have the 4 spheres on Earth? Hydrosphere, all the water on Earth, the atmosphere, the air and sky that surrounds the Earth, the lithosphere, all the land we see and interact with, and the biosphere, all the living things and their non-living environment. And kind of ends that unit up with a quick little check-in. Okay, do you have an understanding of what the 4 spheres are? And again, as we talked about, we talk about these 4 spheres a lot through earth science and also through biology. So you'll continually see these coming back to you. Because as we go into earth science and as we go into biology more, we talk a little bit more closer about what's occurring in these systems or in these spheres. So we get a little bit more in depth about each one of them. Okay. So that was what I have about the 4 spheres here on Earth, kind of taking Earth. I like to go back to that picture again, taking Earth as kind of our big system, breaking it down into 4 smaller systems. And then again, as we go through earth science and biology, we break each one of those down even farther, showing all these interactions between 4 of them. And again, thinking about our Earth as just being a whole massive home of systems all working together, connecting. Does anybody have any questions about that? No. Okay. Well, you can also ask questions about anything else. So I know I heard from a couple people, this is pretty cool. This is your first live session that you have attended. So welcome. Thanks for joining. Again, this is an open question period. So again, if you have questions about what other classes you might be in, I can help you out. If it's geared towards science, I can help you out a whole lot more. But if you have questions about the program or information, this is a great way in these live sessions where we have these open question periods. It's a great way that you can, hop on and you can make sure that you get that question, comment, or idea, feedback. You can give it to me immediately and I can give you a response back immediately, or I can help you find the answer to that. Okay. Thinking forward to next sessions, you can always bring questions ready to go, as you're going through your courses. And if you're getting stuck or something pops in your mind and you're like, oh, there's a live session tomorrow, make a note of it and bring it to the live session. Of course, as you're going through your courses and you have questions anytime, your teachers, we're always here to help you guys. So please, if you have questions, don't feel like you have to just wait for a live session. I don't want you to have to wait if it's like 5 days away. You can always send an email, send a chat message, whatever your mode of communication is that you prefer, send that way. I'm here to help you. Oh, great. You're so welcome. A student said, was thanking for a great way to explain that. Anytime. Again, that's what I always feel like. I always say this, sometimes if you have a question or you're reading something, you're like, this just isn't making sense. Just having somebody else reword it or just say it differently or show a different picture, sometimes it makes that whole difference in making it click in your mind. So good deal. Okay, well, we'll come back to questions. Let's move on to, I want to go over some vocabulary strategies, which is always something I like to talk about because in science, we're always getting these new words and we look at these words sometimes and we're like, oh my goodness, how do I say that? How am I going to remember that? And we've got some tricks for you. But this is also, it goes, along in daily lives. I use this and sometimes when you're reading the newspaper or reading a news or article or something and you come across in your word and you're like, oh my gosh, you try and figure out what that word means. We're always continuously getting new vocabulary and we're getting new words that we've never heard of or seen before come into our lives. And so you can use these strategies not only in science, but in daily life as well, and all your other courses too. Okay. So first, of course, one big tip for using the vocabulary is in your courses, you'll find like a glossary or a unit vocabulary. And this usually comes in kind of the introductions. And this is a great way to, you can bookmark this so that you can come back to it as you're going through your course. You can also, as we know, we are able to use some notes. And so as you're thinking about your final exam, it's always helpful to start creating a study guide as you're going through the units, okay? So it's like you start the unit off, you get these kind of unit objectives. What's this course about? And you can use those, as you can see right here. You can use those as a great kind of way to study and collect information as you're going through the course, because as you're going through the course, you're answering or learning these objectives. So I think it's always handy to I always say, create like a document. You could use like a Word document, title it Earth Science Semester 1. And, you can just copy in this vocabulary so that you can go back to that and review it. And then as you get ready to prepare for the final, you can come back to these words and review some of the vocabulary. Okay, so use that vocabulary. Use that glossary because, of course, it gives you the definitions to these words. So you can always come back to it as you're going through the unit and you come to a word like DNA. You're like, oh my gosh, what does DNA stand for again? Deoxyribonucleic acid. You can have that glossary handy so that you can quickly go back to that and find it. Okay. Use help. So in the curriculum, and the same thing happens when you're reading a book or a textbook or going through the course lessons here. Read the sentence and the sentences around it to see if you can kind of decipher or figure out, based on what's around it, what that word means or what it's about. So you're kind of accessing this kind of like background knowledge using the information around it to help decode it. Also, look to pictures or diagrams to help. So I use this little sentence right here. DNA is characterized as a double helix. Okay, so you're probably thinking right there, like, okay, a double helix, what is that, right? So we can go and we can look to the image and get a better idea of what that double helix means. And as you can see, it's more like a ladder, a twisted ladder. So as we can see double helix, what that means is there's two different sides there. And you can see these are the base pairs that make up DNA. So again, it gives you a much more better visual to see, okay, what does double helix mean? You can come to that picture and you can get a better visual to make it stick in your mind. Okay. And then, of course, it gives you a nice long description in there as well. That helps you figure out what that double helix means using that image and then also with the description around it. Okay, my favorite, and this is, oh my goodness, I use this, I have a 6-year-old, I use this with him all the time with his vocabulary and when we're reading, and I mean, this is me in daily life, like, okay, how do I break this word down? Look to the roots in a word. So as we think about the words, are there parts of the word that are there that we know the meaning of? We think of them as their roots, okay? So example is earth spheres. You know, think of, okay, what's a sphere? Something round, some type of a system, okay? And then as we think of kind of the prefixes to that, so we're thinking about earth spheres, what we just talked about, you know, we have the hydrosphere, the lithosphere, the geosphere, the atmosphere, the biosphere. Do we know what those words mean? So as you think about hydro, if you guys know what hydro means, right? You see it all the time. Hydration, H2O, hydroplanes. We're talking about water, right? Hydrosphere. So we're talking about the system of water on Earth, all the water on Earth. The litho or the geosphere, geo, think of Earth. Think of the rocky substrate for it. Bio, we know this one. So biology, the same thing. This prefix bio, biodiversity, biology, biosphere. Bio means life, okay? So we've got the study of life, the variety of life. Okay, so look to those roots in these vocabulary words or in new words and see if you can break them down. Okay, activate your background knowledge. What do you already know? It's pretty cool to think about it. Think of your brain as like this, you know, filing system, and every day we are just getting bombarded with information, and our brain just kind of tucks it away and it stores it. Sometimes we remember, and sometimes it takes a little bit of activation to pull that information out. So that's why you always see kind of your teachers will show you pictures, or will kind of ask you a question, kind of probe you into it to get your mind thinking, to see if you can create that meaning. If you can activate your background knowledge, you're creating this bond, and whatever it is that you're learning now, it's going to stick so much better because you already have that filed away. You just have to pull it out and then piece it together. Okay, so activate your background knowledge. What do you already know? You know, think of, photosynthesis. This is another word. You're like, oh my gosh, what does that mean? You know, photo. You guys know what photo means? Photography. Photo means light. Okay, so to take a picture, it's using light. Okay, and light is what we can see. So photosynthesize. If you synthesize something, it means you make something. So of course, we're using light to make sugar. Okay, so again, activate that background knowledge. What do you already know? Think about the root words. Can you break them down? Okay, so those are some tips I used when I was in schooling, but also still tips that I use today when I'm learning new words, or also when I'm trying to, think about as I'm starting courses. I just finished a course not too long ago, And it's like, I got to think about how am I going to study for this? You know, I do a whole lot of copying and pasting so I can come back to that information quickly. But again, a big thing, use that information around it. Look to the pictures to help you decide that. Same thing with lessons, activities, quizzes, and tests. Look for clues that are built in there. You know, you might see the description of a word later on in another question. There might be an image that helps you understand what is going on. But again, use those roots, activate your background knowledge. What do you already know? You're smarter than you think. Your brain just tucks it all away. Okay, guys, that's what I got with some vocabulary strategies that are great to use in your science course as well as all your other courses and in your daily life. Does anybody have any questions about strategies? Or again, like I said, I like to end the session with any questions that you guys might have going forward. Make sure that you're set for the week so that you don't sign off and be like, oh, I still don't know about that. Now is your time to get answered. Again, you can use your chat and you can unmute yourself, whatever works for you. If you got a question coming, please feel free. Again, I'm here to help you guys. I'm going to keep talking though. So if you have a question, just send it my way. Thinking about these live sessions. So your teachers we love feedback. So if you have an idea for next week, I'll be back on next Tuesday at the same time. If you have an idea for a live session or an assignment that you have coming up that maybe you'd like a little bit more information on, let me know. You can tell me here. You can send me an email or a chat later on. I would love to take your feedback and use that in one of the live sessions so that I can make it a whole lot more meaningful to you. Because that's what I'm here to do. Okay, guys. Oh, what is that? A student asked if I can get things from English 9. So depending who your teacher is, I can get things. I'm not going to do a live session on English 9 though. I cover science. But if you need information about when the live sessions are for English 9 or who your teacher is, what you can do is on your dashboard, it'll tell you when the next upcoming sessions are. And then you can also specifically send a message or however you like to communicate with your teachers to Google Voice, email, chats. Send a message to your English 9 teacher and ask them what day or what time they're going to be on, or if they know which teacher is going to be covering English 9. Does that help? So just ask them. And again, you can come on to these live sessions. They're always built up this way so that you have a chance to ask questions. So just like I talked about Earth spheres today, maybe you had a question about the Big Bang Theory. During that question period, you can always ask questions about topics that you would like. Oh yes, you're very welcome. Okay, guys. Well, I'm going to sign off here for today. You guys have a fabulous week. Thank you for joining. And again, if you have questions, we're here to help you. Email, chat, whatever your form of communication is, we love to hear from you. Okay, guys. Good luck. Take care.